This episode of Artists I Love features the great Henry Ossawa Tanner. Tanner was an American artist and the first African-American painter to gain international acclaim. Tanner moved to Paris, France in 1891 to study and continued to live there after being accepted in French artistic circles. His painting entitled Daniel in the Lion's Den was accepted into the 1896 Salon, the official art exhibition of the Académie des Beaux-Arts in Paris. After his own self-study in art as a young man, Tanner enrolled in 1879 at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philadelphia. The only black student, he became a favorite of the painter Thomas Eakins, who had recently begun teaching there. Tanner made other connections among artists, including Robert Henry. In the late 1890s, he was sponsored for a trip to Palestine by Rodman Wanamaker, who was impressed by his paintings of biblical themes. Tanner was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the first of 7 children. His middle name commemorated the struggle at Osawatomie between pro- and anti-slavery partisans. His father, Benjamin Tucker Tanner, was a bishop in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first independent black denomination in the United States. Being educated at Avery College and Western Theological Seminary in Pittsburgh, he developed a literary career. In addition, he was a political activist. His mother, Sarah Tanner, was born into slavery in Virginia, but had escaped to the north via the Underground Railroad. Although many artists refused to accept an African-American apprentice, in 1879 Tanner enrolled at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philadelphia, becoming the only black student. His decision to attend the school came at an exciting time in the history of artistic and institutional training. Art academies had long relied on tired notions of study, devoted almost entirely to plaster cast studies and anatomy lectures. This changed drastically with the addition of Thomas Eakins as professor of drawing and painting to the Pennsylvania Academy. Eakins encouraged new methods, such as study from live models, direct discussion of anatomy in male and female classes, and dissections of cadavers to further familiarity and understanding of the human body. Eakins' progressive views and ability to excite and inspire his students would have a profound effect on Tanner. The younger artist proved to be one of Eakins' favorite students. 2 decades after Tanner left the academy, Eakins painted his portrait, making him one of a handful of students to be so honored. At the academy, Tanner befriended artists with whom he kept in contact throughout the rest of his life, most notably Robert Henry, one of the founders of the Ashcan School. During a relatively short time at the academy, Tanner developed a thorough knowledge of anatomy and the skill to express his understanding of the weight and structure of the human figure on the canvas. Although he gained confidence as an artist and began to sell his work, he had to deal with racism in Philadelphia. It had traditionally had strong ties to the South through numerous planter families and commercial ties. In addition, planters had sent their daughters to Philadelphia academies. After the Civil War, many African Americans left the rural South and settled in northern urban centers, at times coming into conflict with increasing population of immigrants from Ireland, Southern and Eastern Europe. Although painting became a therapeutic source of release for Tanner, the lack of acceptance in society was painful. In his autobiography, The Story of an Artist's Life, Tanner describes the burden of racism. I was extremely timid and to be made to feel that I was not wanted. Although in a place where I had every right to be, even months afterwards caused me sometimes weeks of pain. Every time any one of these disagreeable incidents came into my mind, my heart sank, and I was anew tortured by the thought of what I had endured almost as much as the incident itself. In the hope of earning enough money to travel to Europe, Tanner operated a photography studio in Atlanta during the late 1880s. The venture was unsuccessful. During this period, Tanner met Bishop Joseph Crane Hartzell, a trustee of Clark College. Hartzell and his wife befriended Tanner, became his patrons, and recommended him for a teaching job at the college. Tanner taught drawing at Clark College, which is now called Clark Atlanta University, for a short period. In 1891, he traveled to Paris, France, to study at the Académie Julian. He also joined the American Art Students Club of Paris. Paris was a welcome escape for Tanner. Within French art circles, the issue of race mattered little. Tanner acclimated quickly to Parisian life. Except for occasional brief returns home, he spent the rest of his life there. In Paris, he was introduced to many new artists whose works would affect the way in which Tanner painted. At the Louvre, he encountered and studied the works of Gustave Courbet, Jean-Baptiste Chardin, and Louis Le Nain. These artists had painted scenes of ordinary people in their environment, and the effect in Tanner's work is noticeable. The influence of Courbet's The Stonebreakers can be seen in the similarities painted by Tanner in his The Young Sabot Maker. Both paintings explore the theme of apprenticeship and hand labor. Tanner studied under renowned artists such as Jean-Joseph Benjamin Constant and Jean-Paul Laurens. With their guidance, Tanner began to establish a reputation. He settled at the Esteples Art Colony in Normandy. Earlier, Tanner painted marine scenes that showed man's struggle with the sea, but by 1895 he was creating mostly religious works. A transitional work from this period is the recently rediscovered painting of a fishing boat tossed on the waves, which is held by the Smithsonian American Art Museum. This is based on the description of a miracle in the Gospel of Matthew, in which the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Matthew 14:24. The simple resources at Etaples were well adapted to his subject matter, which in several cases featured biblical figures in dark interiors. His painting, entitled Daniel in the Lion's Den, was accepted into the 1896 Salon. Later that year, he painted The Resurrection of Lazarus. The critical praise for this piece solidified Tanner's position in the artistic elite and heralded the future direction of his paintings, which treated mostly biblical themes. Upon seeing The Resurrection of Lazarus, art critic Rodman Wanamaker offered to cover an all-expense-paid trip for Tanner to the Middle East. Wanamaker felt that any serious painter of biblical scenes needed to see the environment firsthand, and that a painter of Tanner's caliber was well worth the investment. Tanner quickly accepted the offer. Before the next salon opened, Tanner set forth for Palestine. Explorations of various mosques and biblical sites, as well as character studies of the local population, allowed Tanner to further his artistic training. His paintings developed a powerful air of mystery and spirituality. Tanner was not the first artist to study the Middle East in person. Since the 1830s, interest in Orientalism had been growing in Europe. Artists such as Eugene Delacroix, David Roberts, and later Henri Matisse made such tours to capitalize on this curiosity. In his adopted home of France, he was given one of their highest honors in 1923, when he was appointed Chevalier of the Legion of Honor, the highest national order of merit, and considered this citation by the French government to be the greatest honor of his illustrious career. In 1893, on a short return visit to the United States, Tanner painted his most famous work, The Banjo Lesson, while in Philadelphia. The painting shows an elderly black man teaching a boy, assumed to be his grandson, how to play the banjo. This deceptively simple-looking work explores several important themes. Blacks had long been stereotyped as entertainers in American culture, and the image of a black man playing the banjo appears throughout American art of the late 19th century. Thomas Worth, Willie Miller, Walter M. Dunk, Eastman Johnson, and Tanner's teacher Thomas Eakins had tackled the subject in their artwork. These images are often reduced to a minstrel-type portrayal. Tanner painted a sensitive reinterpretation. Instead of a generalization, the painting portrays a specific moment of human interaction. The two characters concentrate intently on the task before them. They seem to be oblivious to the rest of the world, which enlarges the sense of real contact and cooperation. The skillfully painted portraits of the individuals make it obvious that these are real people and not types. In addition to being a meaningful exploration of human qualities, the piece is masterfully painted. Tanner undertakes the difficult endeavor of portraying two separate and varying light sources. A natural white, blue glow from the outside enters from the left, while the warm light from a fireplace is apparent on the right. The figures are illuminated where the two light sources meet. Some have hypothesized this as a manifestation of Tanner's situation in transition between two worlds, his American past and his newfound home in France. Tanner is often regarded as a realist painter, focusing on accurate depictions of subjects. While works such as The Banjo Lesson were concerned with everyday life as an African American, Tanner later painted themes based on religious subjects, for which he is now best known. It is likely that Tanner's father, a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, was a formative influence for him. Tanner's body of work is not limited to one specific approach to painting and drawing. His works vary from meticulous attention to detail in some paintings to loose, expressive brushstrokes in others. Often both methods are employed simultaneously. The combination of these two techniques makes for a masterful balance of skillful precision and powerful expression. Tanner was also interested in the effects that color could have in a painting. Many of his paintings accentuate a specific area of the color spectrum. Warmer compositions such as The Resurrection of Lazarus and The Annunciation express the intensity and fire of religious moments and the elation of transcendence between the divine and humanity. Other paintings emphasize cooler, bluer hues. Works such as The Good Shepherd and Return of the Holy Women evoke a feeling of somber religiosity and introspection. Tanner often experimented with light in a composition. The source and intensity of light and shadow in his paintings create a physical, almost tangible space and atmosphere while adding emotion and mood to the environment. Tanner also used light to add symbolic meaning to his paintings. In The Annunciation, the angel Gabriel is represented as a column of light that forms, together with the shelf in the upper left corner, a cross. The view of the representation of Gabriel is consistent with James Romain's comment that through the visual language of her pose and expression, Tanner draws the viewer into Mary's inner life of virtue, trepidation, acceptance, and wonderment. Mary's acceptance includes her acceptance of the cross that she will have to bear by consenting to be the Lord's handmaid. In 1899, Tanner married Jessie Olson, a white Swedish-American opera singer. A contemporary, Virginia Walker Corse, described the relationship as one of equal talents, but racist attitudes insisted the relationship was unequal. His wife Jessie later died in 1925, 12 years before her husband, and he grieved her deeply through the 20s. He sold the family home and Les Charmes where they had been so happy together. They are buried next to each other in Chaux Hautes Design. They had a son, Jesse, who survived Tanner at his death. During World War I, Tanner worked for the Red Cross Public Information Department, during which time he also painted images from the front lines of the war. His works featuring African American troops were rare during the war. In 1923, the French state made him a Knight of the Legion of Honor for his work as an artist. Tanner met with fellow African-American artist Palmer Hayden in Paris circa 1927. They discussed artistic technique, and he gave Hayden advice on interacting with French society. Several of Tanner's paintings were purchased by Atlanta art collector J.J. Haverty, who founded Haverty Furniture Company and was instrumental in establishing the High Museum of Art. Tanner's Etaples Fisher Folk is among several paintings from the Haverty collection, now in the High Museum's permanent collection. Tanner died peacefully at his home in Paris, France on May 25, 1937.